Hi everybody, welcome to Nordic API Austin. Woo, that was a great keynote earlier, and thanks for the speech about AI. I think AI is big, and I work at Cisco. We just open sourced MindMail. It does NLP. It's an open source product we bought like 3 years ago, and we are embedding it into WebEx, all WebEx portfolio and assistant, and it has AI in it. And if you need an AI in your product, I would strongly suggest that you give a look at MindMail. That's an awesome tool we use at Cisco, and it's now open source. We released it last week, MindMail. Then this talk today, my name is Stève. I'm an API architect at Cisco. One of my roles is to help provide consistency on the overall Cisco portfolio, which is about 80 APIs we have with different BU groups working on their own life cycle. And that's a lot of fun. And what that wakes me up every day is to bring the best developer experience. And that takes a lot of work. And I guess there are several API providers here today, API owners. Can you raise your hand? Who owns an API here? Okay, whoa, who codes APIs, loves coding? Cool, okay, then that's a big part of me. I'm here to speak today about everything I discovered. This will be an inspiring talk about API emulators and how they can help you as an API provider, API owner. Then, if we consider those trends in the industry, we try to deploy, easily scale, automate, and secure productivity. And anytime we're doing that, we need to automate. And I think that's the word today is automation is king. And for that purpose, I discovered that API emulators can help on several ways: debugging, testing, and also extending existing IDEs. And then that's what we will dig into. I was on that path just like before joining Cisco. I was a Google Cloud specialist and working with those cloud functions early in the days. And when I started on those beta programs, we already had serverless emulators, like how would you test your Google Cloud functions. And this emulator was coming to help you. And then Amazon came with Lendas with the same approach, and then they provided this emulator, and again provided as a non-official product, something you may use, and a great companion to an API, and that's certainly what you will want to do. Then as I was doing some advocacy at Cisco's developer program for WebEx, I was feeling like I need a WebEx API emulator. And I built that one, local emulator. That means you can run it on your own machine. Again, this is not an official product, but I will start it now on my own machine. Then you git clone the project, and then here it is, running on port 3210. And then now let's go into what's an API emulator. Basically, it mimics your API. Okay, then it's a twin. It has a purpose. Why would you do that? Why did you build another API? You're already building one, okay? It has a purpose. The purpose is to help your developers to make them happy. And what makes them happy? Easy testing and debugging, make them productive, predictable automation. Then you should focus on several use cases, certainly, and implement them totally. It should be fully operational when you implement those use cases. But you don't need to implement your overall set of features. Just focus on the use cases you need. Then, for me, when I was working with WebEx Teams, WebEx is 300 million users. And we've got this tool, persistent chat, like you would do with Slack and other Skype, Teams, Microsoft Teams. We have a WebEx Teams platform. It has a REST API. And it does some like you can create a space, you can interact in a space, you add members, and you add a bot. And if you add a bot in there, you will have a webhook. And anytime something will happen, basically the WebEx platform will send a message to your bot, and the bot will respond with a message. Then basically, I've got the tool on this machine. Then here is a space I already created. And by the way, thanks for hosting Nordic API in Austin. That's definitely a great area. I was willing to come here for just like use, then that's a great opportunity. Then here, if I'm submitting a message, this is my persistent chat, then now, okay, we understand, don't forget to eat some brisket if you like meat. If you don't like meat, take the avocados and tacos. They're very good. And here, I've got a bot in that space, and what does it say? It says, hey, sorry, my friend, I didn't understand, and my bot is broken. He doesn't understand. He doesn't know about brisket and those things. That's bad, and Nordic APIs, I have to teach him that. Okay? How are you going to test that automatically? You need a way to have your bot automate, but that's a cloud service, WebEx. Then there's no way you are going to play against rate limitation and a lot of all the features that are coming on the way, and you want predictable testing. Then that's how I started this project. And then, of course, I will now work a bit with Postman, because Postman is an awesome tool. And unless you've got an API collection, you still don't have an API, okay? If you're an API owner, once you're not really an API owner yet, you don't have an API until you have a Postman collection. And that's the way I see it. Then everything starts in Postman, I just said. Then this is Postman. And then I've got my local endpoint, which is this address I showed earlier, localhost, and then I can initialize my environment. This is something you already know very well. You've got environments in Postman. And if I write my first API call, again, that API is generally getting some info about myself. That is the way we deal with identity. When you heard about QReady, you've got a token, and you want to know get some information behind a token. Okay, that's the way most APIs do it. You just expose a /me endpoint resource, as we call them. Then this is the way you would start, and then when on my emulator, I can say, hey, I want to list my rooms. I don't have any. There's a way here, if I post to the rooms, I will say, hey, look at that. I just send that message, which means I just created a room with an ID, and I can add a bot in there. Then here it will be a user token in the authentication, asking, hey, please add that bot buddy of mine. And then here the bot has just been added, which means that now I can create a webhook. And the webhook is where you will receive back your messages. How do you create a webhook on your local machine? How do you make your local machine accessible on the internet? Then this is where Postman won't help too much. You need a second tool. The tool I use a lot is ngrok. Any lovers of ngrok here? Yeah, okay, sure. Okay, those two. We agree? Postman and ngrok, and your life is wonderful, happy. And briskets, of course, don't forget. And then I'm launching ngrok now on port 8080, and I get this beautiful secured URL because we love HTTPS. Nothing should go over HTTP when you build APIs. And I will say, okay, the target URL of my webhook will be this one. I just created. Okay, then I'm willing now to create a webhook against my emulator. And is it successful? Yeah, 200 OK. And now if I push a message like I did earlier over the emulator in the room, saying hello or something, sending it, boom, message created. But as I have a webhook, look at that, now I have a post. And the good thing with ngrok is always the admin UI. Then you've got for free an admin UI that lets you sniff every URL coming on your local machine. Then let me find again my, this one is good. Oops. And give me a tab, and that's a web UI. Then this is ngrok admin UI. And here is what I just posted like a few seconds ago. And now this is my webhook fired from the emulator. And from there, now what do I have here on my machine? I have a full WebEx API system running the whole API, creating messaging, spaces, interaction messaging, and that lets me test my bot. Then that was my use case. Then now let's see about the lessons learned. What did I learn on this way? Then first thing, it's great for testing. now I have a way to automate those testing. Then I can have a bot test, automatically creates a space. And remember, everything starting from 0. I was just pinging it off. And do you remember when I launched it? It was like milliseconds. Pooh, running. That's something you want to do on a CI/CD pipeline. Okay? And if you want to start doing also on the CI/CD pipeline, doing some unit testing, very soon you will hit rate limiting. Okay? That won't work. Again, the WebEx Cloud, it would be like 50 requests per second, but no more than 50. And there will be a maximum per minute. Okay? Then that won't work in the CI/CD pipeline. Then this is where your API emulator works great. Second thing, QA. If you've got a cloud service or if you're providing an API, the API changes over time. Even if it has non-backward compatible changes, it's still V1, you are adding features over the time. And then it means that your stuff may not work exactly the same way, and you want to experiment that. And that's what your API emulator can bring to your developers, non-regression and versioning. You can't version your cloud service. You can version your API emulator, of course. Third thing, API design. I was surprised at Cisco, the WebEx PMs, the product managers, they took that emulator and they used it for themselves. Like when you want to bring new features to your developers, it's always take a lot of time, okay? You need to implement it, to add feature toggles. And then for those users, you enable this limited craft of developers that have access to your API. And now you can do that for free. You just implement very quickly those new features in your emulator. You give them for testing, and if they're happy, you just say, OK, now it's time to scale this and to put it in the real product. It also happened to me to use the API emulator as a B plan when I was going to a place where I had no internet access, and I couldn't really run my stuff. Then that can be also interesting. In some school or other system, you can have some constrained environment. Then, what does it take to build an API emulator? First, you need someone that has some coding skills, but also, you certainly don't need to put too much energy in it. My learning is that what I've just showed took me like 2 days to build. Okay? And how did I do that? I'm not magic. I don't have magic fingers. I don't have magic powers. The only thing, I know one language pretty well, which is Node.js. And then you just need to start small. What is the use case you want to implement? And to me, that was bot. I wanted to solve the issue with bots in our industry. Then you focus on those, and you pick a quick way of implementing it, and certainly in-memory based. I love in-memory because you just restart, and you don't have to scale up. And it's not like everything can work when you do testing and API emulators. You can run everything in memory. And pick something very low level. For Node, I picked Express, because it's a very low level, and I could tweak all my payloads, my HTTP headers. I could do a lot so that I would mimic the overall, not only the payloads, but also the overall set of headers, okay, so that it behaves exactly the same. You wouldn't know it's an emulator behind the scene, except the URL is not the same, okay. It's on your local machine. And as I was on that journey, I was advocating for another product at Cisco called Tropo. It was the product like closed a few months ago. It was telephony platform as a service. Then it would let you create calls and send text, okay, and get some notifications back. And it was running several languages. Then basically, this is the type of code a developer would do with that platform, and that's what you typically find in products like Twilio today. And that product, I had a big issue with. It's awesome. It's very easy to program. Like when you're saying you ask something, you get an answer. It's like a bot system, okay, very good. But it works with SMS and phone calls, real voice calls. But it was also, okay, guys, the debugging experience and the testing experience was awful. Okay, because just like you would take your script, you would put it in the cloud, and you wouldn't know how it would behave. And it was like, we've been doing that advocacy for 10 years, and we were just facing over and over again the same issues. Then I came with that idea of saying, maybe what we need is an emulator there. I will just provide exactly the same library. Of course, I'm not going to send text message and to do video calls. What does I want to do? I want to make sure my scripts works. Then I just created a library, and I said, here is how it will execute. And now I can verify that my scripts, they compile, and I can go further. Because I was able to go to Visual Studio Code and add a few assistants in there so that you could start your code straight away, see how it behaves. See at the back here, you just have the exact same output in Visual Studio Code saying, hey, this is what's happening. And once you have that emulator, you can go even one step further. You can say, hey, I want to put breakpoints. And now you see your stuff executing step by step, and you can debug, and then you deploy in the cloud. Then to sum it up, if you're an API provider, I would strongly suggest you to start considering an API emulator as part of your strategy. Like you want to have the best API, just taking a few extra days to solve some of the use cases, and that makes a lot of sense for your developers and help them on the way. And just focus on those use cases, build it in hours, days, not weeks. Okay, don't think about a very serious project. Put it in the open source, because you will see a lot of maybe your people internally in your own company, if it's a big one, but also in your ecosystem. They will come, and on top, they will certainly build something useful. Look at your community, as always, and add a best effort disclaimer. And that's the resources I had for today. I think we'll have some time later to chat together. That was a really great time, and I really appreciate the conference again. Thanks for organizing.